Shalom, shalom, shalom to everyone watching. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel. We're now in chapter 8 of the book To Be a Jew. We're doing a summary, a refresher as it were, of each chapter and highlighting some of the important things that as you're reading you need to take a look at. Now these are signs of the covenant, love and reverence. Every single sign that we have is an indication of love and reverence or respect. The mitzvah of tefillin, mezuzah, and tzitzits are all intended to serve as oaths or signs, as reminders of the presence of the Lord and of His commandments and of our duties towards Him. And remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them. Not just feel it in your heart. Do them. Numbers chapter 15, verse 37 through 41. Like prayer, it's called service of the heart, or avodah levavah. These rituals too reflect our love and reverence to God. The call to love God is almost as pervasive as the command to obey Him. Twice daily, the affirmation of God's unity in the expression, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one," is immediately followed by the reminder, "And you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, and with all of your might." But it does not stop there. "For these words with which I have commanded you this day upon your hearts to love your God must be diligently taught to your children." It must help to mold one's thought and action when arising and when going to bed, and when walking on the street and going about one's affairs. Reminders to the effect must be visibly placed upon one's hand, head, upon the gates and doorposts of one's home. And we're going to take a look at these different signs in some of the forthcoming videos. Although fear of God, reverence for God, appears to be stressed in all of the religious sources, and each day prayer begins with the Proverbs that reminds us the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. The Talmud also indicated that the greater is he who serves in love than the one who serves in fear. Sota 31a. Now, Maimonides, in his Guide to the Perplexed, emphasized the greater merit involved in when drawing near to God and observing His precepts out of the love of God or love for God rather than out of fear. You see, love is much a higher category than fear, demanding for the greater intellectual capacity and the much deeper insight, since not everyone disciplined himself to observe the precepts by rising to the level of love, the beginning of wisdom. Nevertheless, we read, it demands that it be done at least out of fear, reverence of God. So whatever the greater merit and the preference for serving God out of love rather than fear, there is no doubt that by both feelings are necessary within the consciousness of the average individual. Each comes into play depending upon the time, circumstances, and maintaining devotion and duty. Both feelings must be present, with one becoming dominant, then the other tends to become lax. Consider the relationship between parents and child. A child whose only feeling for the mother and father is love, while the fear of punishment plays no role. It's more apt to disobey than the child who harbors some fear as well. This is particularly true of a younger child who does not comprehend all the implication of his actions and desire and is still dominated by selfishness. Learning to share is part of the training. In learning to love, on the other hand, when a child's only reason for obeying is fear of punishment, he is apt to break out of his discipline, and for the moment his parents are not looking, he feels he can get away with it, while the child who loves his parents would avoid doing anything that might hurt him. In this relationship between human beings and God, and as between children and parents, The most effective ties are based upon the balance between love and fear. Though the ritual acts of tefillin, mezuzah, and tzitzit were required as a part of a framework of the love of God, the purpose is not to encourage just sentiments and abstract feeling. It's rather to remind us to walk in the ways of the Lord. As we read, "And you shall love the Lord your God," was interpreted by our sages to mean that you cause the name of the Lord to be loved. Sifrei Deuteronomy 6:4. In other words, when the commandment to love was geared to action, doing an activity, rather than just feelings, we are called to demonstrate our love of God by behaving in such a way towards our fellow man as it will invite their love and respect for God, for thus we are instructed. Thus, this requires ethical and moral standards of the highest caliber. It ought to be made clear that in our translation of the Hebrew concept of Yirat Hashem, fear of the Lord, which is translated as fear of God, does not really convey the true meaning. For certainly it does not mean fear in the sense of being afraid, as one might be afraid of a fierce beast or a dangerous situation. For such a feeling, the proper word would have been pachad. Although man is also described as possessed of pachad, in relating to God, God is described by such a term only when Jacob refers to the Almighty as the fear of Isaac. While Yirah does not contain the notion of fearing punishment for wrongdoing, it generally connotes a sense of awe and of deep reverence as one might feel when coming before a powerful ruler or before a great and famous personality, as we read in Genesis chapter 31. Verse 42 and 43. The extra care that one exerts regarding his dress, his speech, his behavior, as such an occasion results from the sense of awe and reverence. To become nervous or shy on such an occasion is not uncommon. We sometimes hear someone being so dumbstruck when suddenly coming into the presence of such a person. This is not necessarily the result of fear. It's rather the result of awe or reverence. It's precisely this feeling that is meant by the term Yirat Hashem. Nor does the term reverence for God does justice to the term Yirat Hashem. It is too tepid, too lukewarm, and it implies courtesy or politeness and respect. However required, it doesn't reflect the depth of the feeling conveyed by the word Yirah. The other biblical references to the observance of Torah, of this mitzvah of tefillin, includes passages we read in Exodus chapter 13, verse 9, chapter 13, verse 16, and Deuteronomy chapter 11, verse 18. All of this because you shall love the Lord your God, which is interpreted to mean you will cause that God's name would be beloved, not the opposite. We're going to take a look at tefillin. We're going to take a look at tzitzit and mezuzahs, all of which are signs of our covenant and agreement with God. There are some that women are exempt from, and there are some that they're not. So we're going to take a look at these different signs of the covenant and would invite you to partake in these commandments. Tefillin, mezuzah, tzitzit, and tzitzit. And so we're going to move forward one by one, each video at a time. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero. Remember to be part of the Ways of Israel and be part of the giving program to the Ways of Israel. You can do so very easily just by going to the webpage, or rather going to paypal.me/Los Caminos de Israel and donate there, or simply send your contribution to rabbiotero@yahoo.com via Zelle. It's rabbiotero@yahoo.com, and that is the page to go directly to our organization's page and be able to donate directly. Thank you and have a blessed day, and God bless you as you grow in the ways of the Lord.